Massive stone cities were perfectly aligned without a single modern tool. This video solves one of history's greatest enigmas, revealing exactly how ancient engineers aligned their colossal structures without lasers, blueprints, or even the wheel. You will learn the 5 core principles these master builders used to turn sunlight, shadow, and simple rope into a precision science. How did a stick in the ground become a tool for mapping the heavens onto the earth? What secret did a bucket of water hold for leveling entire mountainsides? We will journey from the pyramids of Giza to the mountaintop citadels of the Andes, uncovering a forgotten sophistication that rivals our own. By the end, you will see the ancient world not as a place of mystery, but as a testament to brilliant human ingenuity. What forgotten skill from our ancestors do you think we need most today? Alignment is a word we use every day, but for the master builders of the past, it held a meaning far beyond simple geometry. It was a sacred act of connection. To align a city was to weave its streets and temples into the very fabric of the universe, creating a permanent link between the human realm and the forces that governed it. This was not an aesthetic choice, it was a foundational principle of their world. Imagine the profound intention behind placing a doorway so that on the longest day of the year, the first ray of sunlight pierces its darkness and illuminates an inner chamber. That single beam of light, arriving with celestial punctuality year after year, was a message. It was a confirmation of cosmic order, a renewal of a divine promise over days could establish a perfect meridian line, a north-south axis drawn by the sun itself. Yet the engineers needed more than just midday. They needed the boundaries of the sun's journey. By patiently marking the sunrise and sunset points over an entire year, they would witness the sun's path shifting along the horizon. They would note the 2 extreme days, the solstices, when the sun seemed to pause and reverse its course. The line between these 2 farthest sunrise points gave them an east-west axis. With just a stick, some patient observation, and a series of marks in the dirt, they had now inscribed the 4 cardinal directions onto the landscape, a perfect right angle dictated by the cosmos. But the sky offered more than solar guidance. For the builders of the Great Pyramid, the star we call Sirius held profound significance. Its heliacal rising, its first pre-dawn appearance after a period of invisibility, coincided precisely with the annual flooding of the Nile. This celestial event was a herald of renewal, a signal so reliable it anchored their calendar. By aligning temple corridors to frame the rising of Sirius, they did more than mark a direction. They synchronized stone with cosmic rhythm, ensuring their architecture participated in the eternal cycle of their world. This practice reveals the profound depth of the first principle. For these cultures, astronomy was not a separate science. It was the fundamental language of order, a way to translate the predictable, majestic movements of the heavens into the stable, enduring order of their cities. They were not just building in alignment with the stars, they were building a reflection of the stars, creating a terrestrial echo of a celestial harmony they had spent generations learning to hear. But a single shadow cast at noon is just the beginning of the story. The real power of this method unfolds over time as the sun's daily arc changes with the seasons. An ancient engineer would watch that central gnomon, perhaps a tall, straight pole or even a ceremonial obelisk, and they would see its shadow not as a static line, but as a living, moving instrument. Throughout the year, the shadow's path would stretch and contract, its tip tracing a different curve on the ground each day. The longest shadows of winter gave way to the shortest shadows of summer, and in that rhythmic dance was hidden a wealth of geometric data. The key moments were the equinoxes, the 2 days each year when day and night are of equal length. On these days, the sun rises directly east and sets directly west. If you mark the tip of the Gnomon's shadow at various points throughout an equinox day, you will find that the path it traces forms a nearly perfect straight line running precisely east to west. This is not an approximation. It is a geometric truth written in light and darkness, a line drawn by the universe itself. With this east-west baseline established, finding the perpendicular north-south line becomes a simple matter of geometry, creating a perfect right angle on the ground without a single modern tool. But the ingenuity went further. One particularly elegant technique known from ancient Indian texts involves a simple circle. The engineer would plant the gnomon and draw a circle in the dirt around its base, using a length of rope as a compass. As the sun rose, they would watch the shadow's tip. When that tip just touched the circle in the morning, they would make a mark. They would wait patiently, and in the afternoon, when the shrinking shadow's tip once again touched the same circle, they would make a second mark. A straight line drawn between those 2 points gives you a flawless east-west axis. The center of that line, connected back to the base of the gnomon, then reveals true north and south. Think about the profound simplicity of that. With nothing but a stick, a piece of rope, and the patience to observe a full day's journey of the sun, an ancient surveyor could inscribe the cardinal directions onto any patch of land with astonishing accuracy. This was not magic, it was applied celestial geometry. They had learned to use the sun as a fixed point in the sky and the shadow as a moving pen, allowing the cosmos itself to draft the foundational lines of their cities, temples, and tombs. The ground was their parchment and sunlight was their ink. Yet even with the cardinal directions etched into the earth, a new and equally daunting challenge arose. How do you take that perfect celestial line and extend it across miles of rugged, uneven terrain? How do you ensure that the foundation for a temple wall 1,000 feet long is perfectly level when the ground itself slopes and dips? For the answer, ancient engineers looked not to the sky, but to the most humble and obedient substance on earth, water. They understood a fundamental law of physics long before it had a formal name. Water always seeks its own level. A still pool of water, no matter the shape of its container, will create a perfectly flat, horizontal plane. This simple, immutable truth became the cornerstone of their leveling technology. The Romans perfected this idea with an instrument called the chorobates, a long wooden bench, perhaps 20 feet in length, with a shallow groove carved along its top. This groove would be filled with water. By sighting along the surface of the water at each end of the instrument, a surveyor could confirm it was perfectly level. If the water touched the rim at both ends, the chorobates was sitting on a level plane. They could then use plumb lines hanging from the frame to transfer that level line to the ground or to a distant marker. With patience and repetition, this simple tool could establish a level datum point across an entire construction site, ensuring that every foundation stone, from one end of a forum to the other, was laid on the same true horizontal plane. But this ingenuity was not confined to Rome. High in the Andes, at sites like Teotihuacan, archaeologists have found evidence of a similar, yet possibly even more ambitious hydraulic system. Researchers suggest the builders may have used a network of interconnected, water-filled trenches dug into the earth. By filling these channels and observing the water's surface at various points, they could transfer a level benchmark across vast distances, even over the rolling landscape of the Altiplano. This was not just about making floors flat, it was about creating a perfectly stable canvas, a geometric starting point of absolute zero. Imagine the process. Before a single multi-ton stone was set for a pyramid's base or a massive ceremonial platform, teams would use these water levels to meticulously grade the entire site. They were effectively painting a horizontal line across the natural world, using liquid as their brush. This hydraulic leveling was the silent, unseen prerequisite for all the grandeur that followed. It ensured that when those celestial alignments were finally translated into walls and corridors, the structure would not just point in the right direction, it would stand with an unwavering, eternal stability, as solid and level as the surface of a still mountain lake. With celestial lines drawn and the ground made perfectly level, the builders faced a final, practical challenge. How do you translate those grand cosmic alignments and horizontal planes into the precise, right-angled corners of a foundation stone? The answer was coiled at their feet in the form of a simple rope. This was not just any cord. In ancient Egypt, it was the revered measuring cord, knotted at intervals matching the royal cubit. In other cultures, it was a carefully braided line treated with resins to prevent stretching. This humble tool became the physical link between abstract geometry and monumental stone. A team of workers, known in Egypt as the cord stretchers, would take this standardized rope and measure out the primary lengths of a building's base, ensuring every dimension was consistent and true to the sacred plan. But the rope's true genius was revealed in creating perfect square corners. Long before the Greek philosopher Pythagoras formalized the theorem, builders across the world had discovered a powerful, practical secret. They found that if you take a rope with 12 evenly spaced knots and form a triangle with sides measuring 3, 4, and 5 units, the angle between the 3-unit and 4-unit sides is a flawless right angle. This is the 3-4-5 Pythagorean triple, a pocket-sized piece of mathematical certainty. Imagine the scene. To lay out the foundation for a temple, surveyors would drive a stake at the corner point. They would measure 3 units along one proposed wall line and place a second stake. Then, measuring 4 units along the perpendicular line, they would place a third stake. Finally, they would check the diagonal distance between those 2 outer stakes. If it measured exactly 5 units, they knew their corner was perfectly square. If it did not, they would adjust the stakes until the geometry sang true. This elegant technique was not confined to one civilization. Evidence suggests it was used in the precise grid layouts of the Indus Valley city of Mohenjo-Daro, and it was certainly a standard practice for Roman military engineers laying out the perfectly rectangular outlines of their marching camps. This reveals a profound truth about ancient engineering. Their knowledge was not merely theoretical. It was embodied, tactile, and instantly verifiable. The proof was in the tension of the rope and the spacing of the knots. With these tools, the vast cosmic order captured from the sun and stars was finally brought down to Earth, one perfectly square corner at a time, allowing the grand vision to rise from the ground with unshakable precision. The principles of rope and water gave them control over the immediate sight, but the grandest visions demanded a harmony with the landscape itself. This brings us to the fifth and perhaps most profound principle, aligning with sacred geography. For these builders, the earth was not a blank slate, but a living partner in creation. True alignment meant integrating their structures into the very bones of the world, weaving architecture into a tapestry of mountain, river, and horizon. This was topographical orientation, a practice where the surveyor's sightline stretched for miles, connecting human ambition to an immutable natural feature. At Machu Picchu, the Incan engineers did not simply flatten a mountaintop. They orchestrated the city so that key windows, doorways, and ceremonial stones framed specific surrounding peaks, the apus, which were revered as protective deities. The Teotihuacan stone, often called the hitching post of the sun, is precisely positioned to cast no shadow at the midday equinox, but its greater purpose was to serve as a fixed point in a vast mountainous calendar, linking the sun's path to the sacred skyline. Similarly, in Egypt, the immense temple of Karnak is not oriented to true north. Instead, its main axis aligns with the path of the Nile and the midwinter sunrise, creating a symbolic union of the life-giving river and the reborn sun. To achieve these long-distance alignments, they used a deceptively simple tool, the alidade. Imagine a flat, wooden board with a sighting pin or a narrow groove carved along its edge. By placing this board perfectly level, perhaps using our water-filled troughs, a surveyor could peer along the sight line and pinpoint a distant mountain peak or a notch on the horizon. By moving a series of marker stakes in line with that site, they could project that straight line across the entire construction site. This distant natural feature became their eternal reference point, a celestial marker anchored in stone. It meant their alignment would never drift because a mountain does not move. This practice reveals the ultimate goal of ancient engineering. It was not about conquering nature, but about conducting a conversation with it. They were listening to the whispers of the landscape, finding the sacred geometry already present in the world, and then amplifying it with stone. The city became a lens, focusing the spiritual power of a place, making the invisible connections between earth and sky permanently visible for all who lived within its walls. The Giza Plateau stands as the ultimate testament to this integrated philosophy. Here we see not one alignment method, but a masterful symphony of them, woven together into a single, breathtaking complex. The Great Pyramid's base is a square so precise that its sides deviate from true north by a margin smaller than the width of your little finger over its entire length. This is not merely close, it is a feat of engineering that would challenge modern surveyors. How was such perfection achieved? Researchers believe the builders used a brilliant combination of methods. They likely began with the sun, using the equinox shadow technique to establish a primary east-west line with incredible accuracy. But for the final, fine-tuning of the north-south axis, they turned their gaze to the night sky. At that time, the pole star was not Polaris as it is today, but a star called Thuban in the constellation Draco. By observing the circular path of Thuban and other circumpolar stars that never set, they could pinpoint the celestial North Pole with even greater precision than the sun alone could provide. They were essentially using the slow wheeling of the entire night sky as their calibration tool. Yet the alignments at Giza extend far beyond the orientation of a single pyramid. Look at the arrangement of the three great pyramids. They are not placed randomly. Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure form a diagonal line across the plateau, and this line mirrors with a deliberate slight offset the three stars of Orion's belt. This celestial correlation suggests the entire plateau was designed as a terrestrial map of a specific part of the heavens, a concept often called the Orion correlation theory. Whether it was a precise map or a symbolic gesture, the intention is clear. The builders were connecting the pharaoh's eternal resting place to the immutable stars, ensuring his legacy was written not just in stone, but in the cosmos itself. And then there is the Sphinx, the monumental guardian. Its gaze is fixed precisely eastward. On the morning of the spring equinox, an observer standing before the Sphinx would witness the sun rising directly over its shoulder, a dramatic rebirth of light perfectly aligned with this colossal sculpture. This is no accident. It layers a solar alignment onto the stellar and cardinal geometries already present. The Giza complex, therefore, is not just a collection of tombs. It is a multi-layered text written in architecture, a code that speaks simultaneously to the sun, the stars, and the earth. It demonstrates a holistic vision where every stone, every angle, and every sightline served a dual purpose, both practical and profound, binding the realm of the pharaohs forever to the orderly motion of the universe. While Giza's alignments speak to the stars, another ancient city wove its entire urban fabric into the celestial tapestry. Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, rises from the Mexican highlands not as a haphazard collection of temples, but as a single, unified instrument of cosmic observation. Its grand central avenue, which we call the Avenue of the Dead, runs for miles, flanked by massive platforms and pyramids, yet a compass reveals a startling fact. This primary axis is not aligned to true north. It is deliberately skewed 15.5 degrees to the east. This was no error in a city of such staggering precision. This offset is a deliberate pointer, a stone arrow aimed at the horizon. On the specific night when the Pleiades star cluster culminated, or reached its highest point in the sky directly south, an observer standing on this avenue would have seen those culturally sacred stars set in perfect alignment with the road. The entire city, therefore, was oriented to honor this asterism, known to the later Aztecs and likely to Teotihuacan's builders as a symbol of cyclical time and agricultural renewal. But the celestial choreography does not stop there. The Pyramid of the Sun, one of the largest structures of the ancient world, is positioned so that its western facade aligns with the setting sun on the days of its zenith passage, when the sun is directly overhead at noon. This solar event divides the year in two, a powerful marker of time deeply connected to the rainy season essential for survival. Meanwhile, the Pyramid of the Moon at the avenue's northern terminus creates a dramatic visual frame for the Cerro Gordo mountain behind it, a peak believed to hold sacred significance, blending topography with architecture. The most astonishing evidence of this intentional design comes from modern technology. LiDAR scans, which use lasers to map the ground beneath vegetation, have revealed that the city's builders did not just place structures on the landscape. They reshaped the landscape itself. They terraformed the slopes of surrounding mountains and excavated extensive canal systems, not merely for water management, but to create artificial sightlines and reflective pools that would enhance the interplay of light, shadow, and water during key astronomical events. This reveals a vision of urban planning that is almost unimaginable in its scope. Teotihuacan was not built in alignment with the cosmos. It was built as a physical model of it, a vast, three-dimensional calendar and observatory where every citizen lived and walked within a sacred geometry dictated by the heavens. The city itself was the blueprint, a permanent conversation between earth and sky written in stone, water, and aligned mountain slopes. High in the Andes, the Incas conducted a symphony of stone and sky, where every wall and window was a verse in a celestial poem. Their approach to alignment was a masterful blend of the monumental and the minute, a philosophy that governed both the sprawling layout of a city and the precise angle of a single doorway. At the heart of this was an architectural signature, the trapezoidal shape. Walk through the ruins of Machu Picchu or the foundations of the Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, and you will see this form everywhere in windows, doors, and niches. This was not merely an aesthetic choice. The trapezoid is an inherently stable geometric form, resistant to the seismic shaking that frequents the Andes. But its genius extended far beyond earthquake engineering. These trapezoidal openings were carefully oriented to act as celestial viewfinders. A specific window in the Temple of the Sun at Machu Picchu, for example, is perfectly aligned so that on the morning of the June solstice, the first rays of the rising sun fall directly through it, illuminating a sacred stone inside. Another niche might frame the rising of a particular star cluster important to the agricultural calendar. Each opening was a calibrated instrument, a stone-built observatory that transformed the annual journey of the sun and stars into a predictable, visible event within the architecture itself. The most famous of these stone instruments is the Teotihuacan at Machu Picchu, a carved granite pillar whose name translates to the hitching post of the sun. On the equinoxes, this intricately shaped stone casts no shadow at all at midday, the sun sitting directly atop it as if tethered. Throughout the year, the shifting angles and lengths of its shadows against its carved base would have told skilled observers not just the time of day, but the precise time of year, marking solstices, equinoxes, and all the points in between. It was a sophisticated, permanent sundial and calendar, anchoring the city's rituals to the solar cycle with unerring stone certainty. This deep integration of astronomy was both practical and profoundly spiritual. The sun, in Thai, was a central deity, and by building structures that physically captured its light at key moments, the Incas were performing an act of reverence and reciprocity, maintaining the cosmic order essential for their survival. This celestial precision was matched, stone for stone, by an engineering marvel that seems to defy logic: their legendary masonry. The iconic walls of Cusco and sites like Sacsayhuaman, where massive blocks of irregular granite fit together so tightly that not even a blade of grass can slip between them, represent a pinnacle of ancient technique. Achieving this seamless joinery required far more than superb carving skill. It demanded a profound, intuitive understanding of plane geometry and three-dimensional load distribution. Each stone, often weighing many tons, was painstakingly shaped using harder stone tools and abrasive sand. The process was one of trial and error, of repeatedly lowering a block, checking its fit against its neighbors, and then pecking away minute imperfections to increase the contact surface. The goal was not to create flat faces, but to create complex, interlocking three-dimensional puzzles where the convexity of one stone met the concavity of another. This jigsaw-like joinery, combined with the slight inward batter or tilt of the walls, created structures of incredible stability. During an earthquake, these walls would sway and then settle back into place, the interlocking stones holding firm where rigid, mortar-bound constructions would crack and collapse. This masonry method was the ultimate insurance for their alignments, ensuring that the window framed to catch the solstice sun would remain perfectly positioned not for decades but for centuries. The Incan builders' philosophy was one of holistic harmony, where the spiritual need to capture the sky and the practical need to withstand the earth were solved by the same brilliant, patient work in stone, leaving behind a legacy where the architecture itself is the enduring proof of a forgotten science. While the Andes demonstrate a harmony with the physical landscape, another ancient culture wove alignment into the very fabric of belief and power. In the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Mesopotamians saw the night sky not just as a map but as a living text. For Babylonian astronomers, who are also priests, every planetary movement and constellation shift was a celestial omen, a direct message from the gods about the fate of kings, harvests, and empires. They kept meticulous clay tablet records, tracking the cycles of Venus and the paths of planets with astonishing accuracy, believing these heavenly bodies directly influenced earthly affairs. This profound connection between the cosmos and the state meant that urban planning was an act of divine interpretation. The towering ziggurats, those massive step temples, were not randomly placed. They were likely oriented to specific celestial events, serving as colossal stairways for the gods to descend to earth and for priests to ascend closer to the heavens, all within a sacred alignment believed to channel divine favor. This celestial bureaucracy found its ultimate expression in the city of Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar II. Babylon was not an organic, winding maze. It was deliberately planned as a grand, geometric statement. The city was laid out on a near-perfect grid, a revolutionary concept of urban order. At its heart was the processional way, a broad, paved avenue lined with glazed brick images of lions. This was not merely a main street. It was a ritual pathway, its alignment choreographed for the annual New Year festival. During this sacred event, a statue of the patron god Marduk was carried along this very route in a reenactment of his mythical journey, a procession timed and likely directed by astronomical observations. The city's very footprint was a stage for celestial drama, turning urban space into a calendar of stone and ceremony. To translate these sacred blueprints from the stars to the soil, Mesopotamian surveyors relied on a brilliantly simple tool, the Groma. Imagine a vertical staff with a horizontal crossbar mounted at the top. From each end of this crossbar, a plumb line would hang, creating 4 precise vertical sight lines. By planting this staff in the ground and sighting along the hanging cords, a surveyor could establish perfect right angles and straight lines over great distances. Standing at one corner of a proposed temple foundation, he could use the Groma to sight a line for one wall, then turn the instrument 90 degrees to sight the perpendicular wall. With this method, teams could lay out the entire grid of a city, from the grand processional way down to the boundaries of individual plots, ensuring that the divine order observed in the heavens was replicated with geometrical precision on the earth. The Groma made the sacred grid possible, proving that even the most spiritually profound alignments ultimately depended on a clear line of sight and a steady hand. The Groma, a tool of such elegant simplicity, became the literal backbone of an empire. For the Roman engineer, the world was not a place of mystery to be aligned with the stars, but a canvas of potential to be mastered with order. Their genius lay in standardization, in taking the principles of celestial geometry and making them repeatable, portable, and ruthlessly practical. The Groma was the perfect instrument for this mindset. A surveyor would plant its staff firmly in the ground, the horizontal crossarms extending like a pair of unwavering sight lines. From each arm hung a plumb bob, a weight on a string, creating 4 perfectly vertical references against the horizon. By squinting along these hanging cords, the engineer could establish a flawlessly straight line over a hill or through a forest. Turning the entire instrument 90 degrees, he could then sight the perpendicular, creating a perfect right angle in the middle of a wilderness. This was not about sacred mountains or solstice sunrises. This was about control, efficiency, and the relentless expansion of a system. The first act of founding a new city or a military outpost was always the same. Using the Groma, the chief surveyor would lay out the 2 principal streets, the Decumanus Maximus running east-west and the Cardo Maximus running north-south. Their intersection defined the city's heart, the Forum. Every other street, every property line, every aqueduct channel was then measured from this immutable grid. This created a profound sense of familiarity and cohesion across the vast empire. A soldier transferred from Britannia to Syria would find his new garrison laid out in exactly the same logical, rectangular pattern as his old one. He would know where the commander's tent was, where the granaries stood, and how to find the main gate in the dark. This geometric predictability was a psychological anchor, a piece of home replicated in stone and earth across thousands of miles. But the Roman application went far beyond city planning. Their legendary roads, those arrow-straight highways that conquered distance, began with the Groma's sight line. Before any paving stones were set, surveyors used the instrument to plot the most direct possible route, refusing to deviate for minor obstacles. If a hill was in the way, they cut through it. If a valley lay ahead, they bridged it. The Groma gave them the confidence to commit to a line and hold it, creating infrastructure that was not just functional, but a statement of intent. The aqueducts, those marvels of hydraulic engineering that carried water across impossible landscapes, also relied on this foundational precision. To maintain the gentle, consistent slope needed for water to flow for dozens of miles, every section of the channel had to be perfectly level and perfectly straight. Teams of surveyors, using a series of Groma and water levels, would transfer that crucial gradient across the countryside with meticulous care. The legacy of this tool is written across the modern world. When you look at a city map with a grid of numbered streets and avenues, you are seeing the ghost of the Roman Groma. It represents a pivotal shift in the purpose of alignment, from a sacred dialogue with the cosmos to a powerful language of administration, unity, and enduring human order. Yet across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, a different kind of alignment story was being written, one born from profound isolation. On the remote island of Rapa Nui, known to the world as Easter Island, the monolithic Moai statues stand as silent guardians of a forgotten engineering tradition. These colossal stone figures, some weighing over 80 tons, were not arranged in celestial grids or aligned to distant mountains. their placement speaks to a more intimate, human-centered geography. The statues were erected on massive stone platforms called ahu, which line the coastline. Most of these ahu are positioned so the Moai face inland, their stern gazes fixed not on the horizon, but directly over the village sites of the people who carved them. This was an alignment of protection and watchfulness, connecting the living community to the ancestral power embodied in the stone. The ancestors made manifest in the Moai were perpetually present, overseeing the daily life and fertile lands of their descendants. It was a spiritual topography, turning the entire island into a sacred landscape where every glance from a village would meet the eyes of a watchful forebear. But within this primary pattern, whispers of celestial intention remain. Certain ahu, like the famous site of Tongariki, show alignments that correspond with the rising or setting sun during the solstices. One particular Moai, studied by researchers, has been noted to frame the sunset during the equinox. These astronomical clues suggest that while the primary function was social and ancestral, the builders also wove their understanding of the solar cycle into the placement of their most important monuments. This duality reflects a society deeply attuned to both its human lineage and the natural rhythms governing its isolated world. The true marvel, however, lies not just in where they placed the giants, but in how they got them there. The island's volcanic quarries are located inland, meaning these multi-ton statues were transported miles across rugged terrain without the use of wheels, draft animals, or metal tools. The prevailing theory, supported by local oral tradition and experimental archaeology, suggests the Moai were made to walk. Using a system of ropes, teams would rock the statue from side to side, pivoting it forward with each gentle oscillation. This method, a controlled, rhythmic swaying, would have allowed a small army of people to guide the colossal figure across the landscape in a slow, deliberate procession, a journey that itself must have been a powerful ceremonial act. Once at the ahu, the final challenge was even more audacious, raising the statue from a horizontal position to its permanent vertical stance. Evidence points to the use of a graduated stone ramp. The prone Moai would be levered up incrementally, its head raised first, while stones and earth were packed beneath it to hold each new angle. As the front rose higher, the ramp would be built up under it, creating a rising slope until the statue reached a pivotal point and could be swung fully upright onto the prepared platform. This painstaking, leverage-based technique required an intimate knowledge of weight distribution and center of gravity, a physics mastered through generations of trial, observation, and passed-down wisdom. The placement of the Moai, therefore, represents the culmination of a staggering logistical feat. It was a process that demanded not only engineering skill but immense social cohesion, mobilizing the entire community around a shared vision that connected them to their past and anchored them to their precious, limited land. In their steadfast inland gaze, we see an alignment philosophy turned inward, a monumental conversation between the living and their lineage, achieved through a harmony of rope, ramp, and collective will that stands as one of humanity's most astonishing acts of stone-crafted devotion. Across the windswept plains of Neolithic Europe, a different kind of alignment emerged, one not of towering cities but of stark, open circles. In places like Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain and the endless rows of Karnak in France, we witness humanity's first monumental experiments in celestial geometry, a communal effort to pin the motions of the sky to the stillness of the earth. These were not places to live, but places to observe, to gather, and to mark time on a grand public scale. The iconic heel stone at Stonehenge, standing solitary outside the main circle, acts as a precise foresight. When viewed from the center of the circle at dawn on the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over its weathered top, a dramatic alignment that would have bathed the entire interior in a shaft of golden light. But the genius of Stonehenge is layered. Its construction unfolded over centuries, and with each phase, the builders revealed a deepening understanding. The arrangement of the smaller blue stones and the larger sarsen trilithons appears to map complex lunar cycles, potentially even predicting eclipses. This was not a static monument, but an evolving stone computer, its alignments refined over generations as astronomical knowledge grew. The methods behind these vast landscape calendars were elegantly simple. To create the initial perfect circle, builders likely hammered a central stake into the ground. Tying a long rope to it, they would walk the circumference, marking points at set intervals, perhaps using another peg or a pile of chalk. This rope and peg geometry could establish the primary ring. For the long-distance alignments, like the avenue leading to Stonehenge, they may have used long, hollowed-out wooden tubes. By sighting through such a tube from a fixed point within the circle, they could precisely pinpoint where a specific star would rise or the sun would set on the distant, natural horizon, free from the distortion of peripheral vision. They then marked that spot permanently with a massive stone. This practice transformed the entire surrounding landscape into a calibrated instrument. The monument itself was the fixed reference, and the distant horizon became the moving dial. These sprawling sites represent a profound shift in purpose. Unlike the urban grids of Babylon or the integrated cities of Teotihuacan, places like Stonehenge were dedicated ceremonial machines. Their engineering served a singular goal: to encode astronomical knowledge into a form that would outlast any individual, any chieftain, any generation. They were communal calendars under the open sky, where an entire culture could witness the reaffirmation of cosmic order together. The effort required to transport the colossal stones, some over hundreds of miles, speaks of a society unified by a shared vision that transcended daily survival. They were building a permanent connection to the cycles that governed their world, planting stones like eternal seeds to harvest understanding from the heavens year after year, century after century. This legacy of stone and sky raises a haunting question. What happens when the meticulous alignments of the ancient world begin to drift, not because the stones move, but because the very sky above them changes? But the silent stones hold another secret, a potential whisper from the past that suggests alignment was not only a visual science, but an auditory one. A fascinating and still speculative hypothesis emerging from modern acoustical research proposes that sound itself may have been a tool of the ancient engineer. This idea moves beyond sight and into the realm of vibration, suggesting that our ancestors may have tuned their monuments not just to the stars, but to specific frequencies. At the extraordinary subterranean complex known as the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, a structure carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago, something remarkable happens. Certain of its oval chambers resonate powerfully at particular sonic frequencies, creating a reverberation that can be felt physically in the bones. When a person speaks or chants inside these spaces, the sound is transformed, amplified, and sustained in an almost otherworldly way. Researchers studying this phenomenon propose that such spaces were not accidental. They may have been deliberately shaped to enhance ritual sound, using acoustics to alter consciousness and deepen communal experience. But the application of sound might have been even more practical. Think of a massive stone block being moved on wooden rollers. A team pulling on guide ropes would need perfect synchronization to inch it forward without it twisting or binding. Now imagine a steady, rhythmic drumbeat providing that shared pulse. The vibration travels through the ground, up through the feet of the workers, and into the very ropes they pull, creating a tangible, physical metronome that unites their effort into a single, efficient motion. Furthermore, some experiments have explored the idea of using resonant frequencies to sense level. If a flat stone slab is struck, the sound it produces changes depending on how evenly it is supported. A perfectly level stone might ring with a clear, pure tone, while an uneven one creates dissonance. By listening, skilled workers could potentially make minute adjustments until the stone sang true, using their ears as a precision instrument. This sensory approach extends to the very act of shaping stone. The practice of using sound to find natural fracture lines in granite is known in some traditional stonemasonry. By tapping a rock with a hammer and listening to the pitch and clarity of the ring, a craftsperson can discern internal stresses and weaknesses, guiding where to place their tools. While we may never have definitive proof that grand alignments were set by sound, the possibility reframes our understanding of these sites. It suggests a worldview where engineering was a holistic practice, engaging every human faculty, sight, touch, and hearing, in a deep, intuitive conversation with the material world. The monuments they left behind might not only point to the heavens, but also remember the echoes of the chants and rhythms that helped raise them. The silent alignment of stone required a thunderous coordination of human will. While we marvel at the precise angles and celestial sightlines, the true foundation of every ancient megaproject was not just geometry, but people, vast armies of laborers, artisans, and organizers working in concert for a common goal. The physical alignment we see today is the final, frozen result of a staggering logistical feat, a symphony of effort conducted across decades, sometimes even centuries. Consider the sprawling temple complex of Angkor Wat. Its magnificent symmetry and vast moats represent more than architectural genius. They are the endpoint of a supply chain that fed, housed, and directed a workforce numbering in the tens of thousands. These were not slaves driven by a whip, but a society mobilized by a shared vision, often rooted in deep spiritual belief or collective identity. The motivation was the glue that held the project together through generations. For some, it was the promise of divine favor or a secure afterlife. For others, it was duty to the king or the honor of contributing to a legacy that would outlive them all. This cultural engine powered an organizational machine of breathtaking sophistication. Before a single foundation trench could be dug, planners had to solve problems of staggering scale. How do you feed 10,000 workers every day in a remote jungle or on a barren plateau? The answer lay in advanced agricultural planning and distribution networks that funneled rice, fish, and fresh water to the site as reliably as any modern logistics company. How do you manage the quarrying, transport, and shaping of millions of stone blocks? This required a hierarchy of skill, from master architects who held the celestial blueprint in their minds, down to foremen who directed specific work gangs, and finally to the individual masons and haulers who executed the plan with their hands. The transmission of that precise architectural vision was itself a monumental achievement in communication. Without detailed blueprints or digital models, master builders relied on simple, powerful tools. They might create small-scale clay or wooden models of a temple for workers to reference. They could etch detailed diagrams directly into prepared plaster floors or sketch them in the sand, using ropes and pegs to scale the proportions up to full size. Critical knowledge was also carried in song, story, and oral tradition, turning complex geometric rules and alignment formulas into memorable chants that could be passed from an elder to an apprentice, preserving the sacred mathematics across generations. This system created a living chain of knowledge where every worker understood their specific role in a pattern much larger than themselves. The Great Wall of China stands as the ultimate testament to this human coordination. Its serpentine path across mountains and deserts was not built by a single dynasty, but by many over 2,000 years. It required the synchronization of countless regional teams, each adapting the central directive to their local terrain, while maintaining the wall's defensive integrity and communication function. The coordination of watchtower construction alone, ensuring each one was within sight of the next to allow signal fires to relay messages, was a masterpiece of long-distance planning and spatial awareness executed without telescopes or radios. This reveals the profound truth behind the stone. The perfect alignment of a city's axis or a pyramid's corner was first achieved in the alignment of human purpose, in the shared calendar of labor, the communal rhythm of the work song, and the patient transfer of knowledge from one mind, one generation to the next. The monuments are not just feats of engineering. They are the physical echoes of a society's ability to dream together, organize together, and build together toward a horizon far beyond any single lifetime. This seamless chain of human effort relied on a fragile and powerful vessel, the master builder's mind. In a world without engineering textbooks or digital archives, the preservation of celestial alignments and hydraulic secrets became a sacred trust, passed not on parchment, but from person to person through a living tradition of apprenticeship. The master builder was more than a skilled craftsman. He was a keeper of cosmic blueprints, a walking library of techniques refined over a lifetime. His knowledge was a form of power, often considered the property of the priesthood or the divine king himself, too valuable to be written down where it might be stolen or misunderstood. This created a system of profound intimacy and immense risk. A young apprentice, chosen for his keen eye and steady hand, would enter into a decades-long partnership. His education was not theoretical, it was embodied. He learned by doing, by holding the rope while his mentor sighted the stars, by mixing the leveling slurry for the water trench, by feeling the way a stone's ring changed as it was brought to a perfect plane. Geometry was taught through the tension in a knotted cord, astronomy through the chill of pre-dawn vigils watching for a star's first gleam. Every principle, from the Pythagorean triple to the solstice alignment, was encoded in stories, chants, and hands-on repetition, making the knowledge inseparable from the person who held it. This oral and practical transmission ensured incredible accuracy within a lineage. A master could correct an apprentice's error in real time, imparting the nuance and intuition that a written manual could never capture. It created guilds, closed communities of experts bound by oath and tradition, who could execute projects of breathtaking scale with a unified vision. Yet this very strength was also a profound vulnerability. The knowledge existed only in living memory. If a guild was dissolved by conquest, if a master died without a worthy successor, or if a society's priorities shifted abruptly, entire libraries of technique could vanish in a single generation. The great silences in the archaeological record, the methods we can only guess at through reverse engineering, often stem from these broken chains. The loss was not merely of data, but of a way of seeing and shaping the world, a conversation with the cosmos that fell silent, leaving only the majestic, enigmatic stones to whisper of a forgotten dialogue. The mystery of these alignments is so profound that it has sometimes inspired explanations reaching beyond our world. Stories of ancient astronauts or a single, forgotten super-civilization capture the imagination, offering a tantalizing shortcut to explain what seems impossible. Yet these narratives, however compelling, carry a quiet disservice. In suggesting that such precision must come from beyond Earth, they subtly dismiss the vast, observable evidence of human intellect, perseverance, and culturally specific innovation. The truth is, we do not need to look to the stars for architects. We need only look to the patient, cumulative genius of generations of engineers right here on our own planet. Consider the often cited Baghdad battery, a clay jar found with a copper cylinder and iron rod inside. While some have theorized it was a primitive galvanic cell, the consensus among archaeologists is far more practical. It was most likely a secure storage vessel for precious scrolls, its metal components simply acting as a sealed roll top. This pattern repeats. The monumental stones at Puma Punku in Bolivia, with their intricate interlocking cuts, are frequently cited as evidence of machine tooling. However, close examination reveals tool marks consistent with patient pecking and grinding using stone hammers and abrasive sand, techniques demonstrated by experimental archaeologists. The precision is not a mystery of lost technology, but a testament to limitless patience and skill passed down through dedicated guilds. These human-scale explanations are not less amazing. They are more so. They tell a story of observation honed over centuries, of small innovations shared and improved across trade routes, of societies so attuned to their environment that they could turn sunlight and water into tools of celestial measurement. To credit aliens or a single lost culture is to ignore the beautiful, diverse tapestry of human problem-solving. It overlooks the Incan mastery of seismic engineering born from living in the Andes, or the Roman obsession with hydrological control that grew from managing a vast empire. Each civilization developed solutions uniquely fitted to its geography, beliefs, and needs. The real wonder lies not in a fictional, uniform high-tech past, but in the many different, brilliant ways humanity learned to converse with stone and sky. This tangible human story of incremental discovery is ultimately more respectful to our ancestors and far more inspiring for us. It proves that with careful observation, collaborative effort, and time, people are capable of extraordinary things. Theories and blueprints remain abstract until they are tested by sweat and stone. This is where the modern science of experimental archaeology enters the scene, a field dedicated to turning scholarly speculation into tangible, hands-on reality. Researchers do not merely study ancient sites from a distance. They pick up replica tools, gather teams of volunteers, and attempt to rebuild the past, one heavy lift at a time. This rigorous, often grueling process has become one of the most powerful tools for understanding how the impossible was made routine. At the Giza Plateau, the archaeologist Mark Lehner led a groundbreaking project that went beyond mapping. His team actually quarried limestone blocks using reconstructed copper chisels and stone dolerite pounders, then transported them on wooden sledges across a prepared surface. The experiment revealed not just the feasibility, but the sheer human effort involved, calculating the precise number of workers and the optimal organization needed to keep a pyramid's construction on schedule. It transformed abstract estimates into a vivid picture of coordinated labor, complete with the sounds of pounding stone and the strain of pulling ropes. Perhaps the most public demonstrations came from the documentary series Secrets of Lost Empires, which took on some of history's greatest engineering puzzles. In one memorable attempt, a team tried to raise a massive Egyptian obelisk using only ramps, sand, and human power. Their initial failures were not setbacks but revelations. Each stumble taught them about the critical importance of the obelisk's center of gravity, the precise angle of the ramp, and the exact moment to shift from pulling to guiding. In another episode, they assembled a Stonehenge-style trilithon, discovering that fitting the massive lintel onto the uprights required not brute force, but a clever system of wooden levers and packing stones, a slow, incremental dance of precision. These experiments do more than prove something could be done. They illuminate the countless ways it could have gone wrong, forcing modern minds to think like ancient problem solvers. They answer practical questions that texts and ruins never could. How many people are needed to pivot a 20-ton Moai? What happens to a rope under that much tension? How does the sound of a struck stone change when it is perfectly seated? By grounding our understanding in physical reality, experimental archaeology closes the gap between our world and theirs. It reminds us that these wonders were not created by magic or mystery, but by intelligences as sharp as our own, applied to the materials and physics they had at hand, succeeding through perseverance, observation, and a deep, hard-won knowledge of the world. Their stone tools and water levels were guided by a silent, internal logic, a mathematics of the hands and eyes, Ancient engineers did not rely on the abstract symbols and equations that fill our textbooks today. Instead, they thought in a language of relationships, of ratios and proportions they could see in the world around them. This was a mathematics of pattern recognition, a practical intelligence that translated the harmonies of nature directly into the stability of their structures. They observed that certain shapes and scales simply felt right, and through generations of trial and observation, they codified these pleasing proportions into a building science. The Parthenon in Athens is often cited as a masterpiece of this intuitive geometry. Its facade is not a simple rectangle. The spacing of its columns and the dimensions of its base subtly incorporate what we now call the golden ratio, a proportion where a line is divided so the longer part to the whole is the same as the shorter part to the longer part. This ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1, appears repeatedly in nature, in the spiral of a nautilus shell or the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. The Greek builders did not calculate it with decimals. They constructed it geometrically using a compass and straightedge, embedding this natural harmony into their temples to create a sense of timeless beauty and balance. Similarly, the numerical patterns later formalized as the Fibonacci sequence, where each number is the sum of the two before it, can be seen in the branching of trees and the family lines of honeybees. Ancient observers of these organic patterns understood them as expressions of a fundamental growth principle, a logic they could emulate to give their own creations a sense of organic, living order. This practical mathematics extended to the most fundamental constants. Builders across cultures understood the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter, the value we call pi. They did not express it as an infinite decimal, but as a useful, approximate ratio. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid's perimeter divided by twice its height gives a figure remarkably close to pi, suggesting the builders used a simple, repeated ratio like the seked, a measure of slope, to incorporate this circular relationship into a square-based monument. The Pythagorean theorem, too, was a builder's rule long before it was a philosopher's proof. That 3-4-5 triangle created with a knotted rope was not a theoretical exercise. It was a daily tool for ensuring square corners, a physical truth they could hold in their hands and verify with a taut cord. This entire body of knowledge was preserved not in dry textbooks, but in living traditions. The Roman architect Vitruvius captured it in his 10-volume work, De Architectura, a manual that blends practical advice on aqueducts and cranes with philosophical musings on proportion, symmetry, and the imitation of nature. For Vitruvius, good architecture mirrored the perfect proportions of the human body, which itself was a microcosm of the harmonious cosmos. This idea that the same mathematical principles governed the stars, the human form, and a well-built temple was the ultimate expression of their worldview. Their precision did not come from solving for X. It came from a deep, cultivated sensitivity to the patterns that underpin our world, patterns they learned to replicate in stone, creating alignments that feel eternally right because they are echoes of the very order of the universe itself. The master blueprint was always written by the land itself. While the core principles of alignment were shared across continents, the specific methods ancient engineers chose were not pulled from a universal handbook. They were brilliant, localized adaptations, a direct response to the challenges and gifts of their immediate environment. This was engineering as a conversation where the climate spoke and the builders listened. In the misty, cloud-frequent skies of northern Europe, where the sun could be a fleeting visitor for days, builders at sites like Stonehenge and Newgrange placed a greater emphasis on the moon. Lunar alignments offered a more reliable celestial clock. The moon's phases and its more extreme rising and setting points on the horizon, known as the lunar standstills, are visible even through high, thin cloud cover that would obscure fainter stars. This environmental constraint didn't limit their ambition. it refined their focus, leading to monuments that tracked the slower, 18.6-year cycle of the moon with a patience born of necessity. Contrast this with the engineers of Egypt or the high Andes. In these regions, the air is often crystalline, the nights ink black and studded with stars. Here, solar and stellar observations were not just possible, they were spectacularly reliable. The clear, dry atmosphere provided a perfect canvas for precise shadow casting and unobstructed views of the Milky Way. The environment didn't just allow for solar alignment, it practically demanded it, offering a consistent, daily performance of light and shadow that could be measured with exacting accuracy. The very tools they used were also born from the ground beneath their feet. In forested regions like those of Neolithic Europe or parts of Southeast Asia, abundant timber was not just a building material, it was the primary machinery. Massive timber frameworks, frames, and sledges were constructed to lever and transport stones, turning the forest's bounty into a kinetic toolkit. The famous stone circles were raised with wooden tripods and woven ropes made from local fibers. In stark contrast, look to the stone-rich landscapes of Central America or the Pacific Islands. Where giant trees were scarce, the builders used the stone itself as the tool. At sites like Costa Rica's mysterious stone spheres or on Rapa Nui, archaeologists have found evidence of stone balls used as rollers or pivots, and smaller, harder stones employed as hammers to shape their colossal cousins. The material became the method. Even the iconic Inca masonry, which seems to use no tools at all, relied on the landscape. They used river cobbles of harder granite or quartzite to pound and grind the softer building stones, and abrasive sand from local riverbeds to polish surfaces to a perfect fit. This profound adaptability reveals a fundamental truth. Ancient engineering was not a technology imposed upon a place. It was a technology extracted from it, a set of solutions whispered by the wind, the rock, and the very clarity of the night sky. The genius of these builders lay not in defying their environment, but in learning its language so fluently that they could ask the earth itself to help move its own mountains. This cosmic geometry was never just about stars and stones, it was also a language of earthly authority. When a ruler commissioned a city aligned with the heavens, they were performing an act of profound political theater. They were declaring, in the most permanent medium possible, that their rule was not merely a human affair, but a divinely sanctioned extension of the universe's own order. The perfectly straight processional way, the temple whose doors opened only for the solstice sun, these were not just feats of engineering. They were physical proof that the ruler could command the very principles of creation, bending the landscape itself to mirror a celestial blueprint only they, in partnership with the gods, could interpret. This transformed the ruler from a mere administrator into a cosmic intermediary, the essential pivot point between heaven and earth. For the people who built it, the act of construction was equally transformative. To spend years hauling stones into a perfect celestial alignment was to participate in a sacred project far greater than any individual. It forged a shared identity rooted in a common, monumental purpose. The labor was hard, but it was meaningful. A farmer who helped lay the foundation for a pyramid that would capture the sunrise knew his work was literally helping to anchor his civilization to the eternal cycles of the gods. This shared endeavor turned a diverse population into a unified community, bound by the sweat and pride of raising something immortal. The finished city, therefore, stood as a dual symbol. To its citizens, it was a testament to their collective spirit and divine favor, a home woven into the fabric of the cosmos. To rival kingdoms or potential invaders gazing from afar, those gleaming, geometrically perfect walls and towering ziggurats sent a very different message. They projected an image of invincible order, technological mastery, and spiritual authority so complete it could dictate terms to the sun and the stars. A civilization that could rearrange mountains to match the sky was not to be trifled with. This silent, stone declaration of power was built to awe, intimidate, and endure long after the ruler's name was forgotten, ensuring the legacy of their command would echo down the centuries in every aligned corridor and every shadow cast by a precisely placed obelisk. Yet the hands that wove the celestial blueprint extended far beyond the traditional image of the master builder. To see the full intellectual tapestry behind these alignments, we must look into the spaces often left in shadow by historical records, to the essential contributions of women. While ancient texts and carvings frequently highlight male architects and rulers, the foundational knowledge systems they relied upon were often cultivated and preserved by women in roles central to their societies. Consider the art of weaving, a domain traditionally and almost universally managed by women across these ancient cultures. This was not a simple domestic task. To create complex textiles with repeating geometric patterns, symmetrical designs, and precise color sequences requires an advanced, intuitive understanding of spatial reasoning, proportion, and mathematics. A weaver working on a loom is essentially executing a complex algorithm, thinking several steps ahead to interlace threads into a predetermined, flawless pattern. This very same cognitive skill, translating an abstract design into a tangible, structured form, is directly applicable to laying out the geometric foundations of a city or plotting the alignments of a temple. The mind that could hold the pattern for an intricate tapestry could also hold the pattern for a sacred grid. Beyond the loom, women were frequently the primary keepers of another form of vital, practical knowledge, the calendar. In agricultural societies, the timing of planting and harvest was a matter of survival, and this timing was dictated by the sky. The cycles of the moon, the rising of specific stars before dawn, the subtle shift in the sun's path, these were celestial signals that women observed and interpreted to manage food production and storage. This made them living repositories of astronomical lore, their expertise passed down through generations. This knowledge was not separate from the sacred. In places like ancient Mesopotamia, priestesses held esteemed positions as temple astronomers. They meticulously tracked the movements of Venus and other planets, recording their observations on clay tablets, believing these celestial omens conveyed the will of the gods. Their work was a direct input into the state's decision-making, and by extension, into the planning of temples and cities believed to require divine favor. Their observations provided the raw data that could determine when a foundation stone should be laid or how a processional way should be oriented. Acknowledging these roles changes our understanding of the monumental project. It moves us from a vision of solitary male genius directing anonymous labor to a picture of a collaborative intellectual ecosystem. The grand vision required not just the architect who could cite a line with a Groma, but the pattern thinker who understood the geometry, the calendar keeper who knew the correct celestial moment, and the ritual specialist who could consecrate the act. The labor crews themselves were undoubtedly mixed in many contexts, with women contributing in logistical, artistic, and technical capacities that historical narratives have minimized. By weaving these overlooked contributors back into the story, we see ancient engineering for what it truly was, a whole civilization endeavor. It drew upon every form of cultivated intelligence, from the mathematics in a woven blanket to the star lore in a harvest song, synthesizing them into a shared language of stone and sky. This fuller picture does not diminish the achievements. It deepens our respect for the intricate social and intellectual machine that made such precision not just possible, but repeatable across the millennia. That profound sense of connection was not a mere byproduct, it was the entire point. Stepping into one of these spaces, you are immediately enveloped by a feeling of profound stability. The perfect symmetry of the walls, the unwavering line of a corridor stretching toward a distant mountain, the way light falls in a precise rectangle upon the floor at a specific hour, all of this communicates one powerful message. Here, the universe is in order. For an ancient person living in a world filled with unpredictable weather, illness, and uncertainty, this engineered environment provided a psychological anchor. It was a sanctuary of predictability carved from chaos. This feeling we might call awe today was a carefully cultivated tool, a designed experience meant to humble the individual and elevate the community. When you stand in the center of the Pantheon in Rome and look up at the oculus, the single circular opening to the sky, you are physically positioned within a perfect sphere of space. The light entering moves across the interior like a celestial clock, marking the hours and seasons on the marble floor. You are not just observing the passage of time, you are standing inside its mechanism. This transforms the abstract concept of a solar cycle into a personal, visceral experience. You feel oriented not just to the north or south, but to your place in the grand, turning wheel of the year. This intentional manipulation of human experience was most potent during rituals. Imagine participating in a ceremony at dawn on the summer solstice within a stone circle. As the first sliver of sun breaks the horizon, a beam of light shoots through a precisely aligned opening and strikes a central altar stone. In that electrifying moment, the boundary between human ritual and cosmic event dissolves. The people are not just praying for the sun's return, they are witnessing its direct, engineered response. Their chants and offerings are met with a visible, tangible answer written in light. This synchrony does more than inspire wonder, it validates the entire belief system. It proves the priests can commune with the powers that govern life itself. The architecture becomes the ultimate priest, performing a miracle of alignment year after year, century after century, long after its original builders are gone. Even in daily life, this design shaped consciousness. Walking down the Cardo Maximus in a Roman city, your path dictated by that original Groma sightline, you moved within a manifest grid of logic and control. Living in a house whose windows aligned with the winter sunrise meant your darkest days were literally brightened by a promise of renewal, a personal daily reminder of cosmic continuity. These spaces taught people how to perceive their world, training them to see meaning in direction, cycles in sunlight, and divine presence in geometric perfection. The primary goal was never merely to build a shelter or a temple, but to construct a vessel for a specific state of mind. They were building stability itself, forging a collective psyche rooted in the reassuring, repeatable rhythms of a universe they had learned to mirror in stone. Yet this deep, embodied conversation with the cosmos could not last forever. A profound shift in human thought began to turn the sky from a living partner into a distant object of study. As large, centralized monotheistic faiths rose to prominence across Europe and the Middle East, the focus of sacred architecture moved inward. The divine was increasingly seen as transcendent, beyond the physical world, to be approached through scripture, prayer, and inner devotion rather than through precise alignment with celestial bodies. The Grand Cathedral, while still often oriented eastward toward the rising sun in a symbolic nod to resurrection, was not primarily an astronomical instrument. Its soaring vaults pointed heavenward, but its layout was dictated by the needs of liturgy and congregation, not by the tracking of solstice shadows or star clusters. The city walls that grew around these cathedrals followed the logic of defense and the organic paths of trade, their winding streets a stark contrast to the rigid, cosmos-replicating grids of Babylon or Teotihuacan. The very purpose of a city was being redefined, from a mirror of heaven to a fortress of faith and a hub of commerce. This philosophical transition was cemented by the tools that followed. The magnetic compass arriving from China offered a miraculous new way to find north. It was quick, reliable, and worked regardless of cloud cover or time of day. Later, instruments like the theodolite combined a telescope with precise angular scales, allowing surveyors to measure the world with unprecedented accuracy. Yet this convenience came with a subtle cost. These tools extracted the user from the process. Finding north no longer required understanding the sun's annual journey or the slow wheeling of the night sky. It required looking at a magnetized needle. Precision became a mechanical output divorced from its celestial origins. The alignment of a new road or a property boundary was now a matter of geometry and convenience, utterly disconnected from any notion of sacred timing or cosmic harmony. The universe, in the eyes of the planner, was becoming a vast, predictable machine, and these new tools were the levers with which to control its local effects. The final blow to the old way of thinking was the Industrial Revolution. Urban planning was now enslaved to a new god, efficiency. Cities exploded outward along railway lines and canals. The primary concern was the swift movement of goods, resources, and labor. The romantic idea of aligning a boulevard with a star's rise was laughable when the urgent need was to connect a factory to a port. The street grid, when used, was a utilitarian framework for maximizing real estate and traffic flow. Its right angles born from the drafting table and the economics of land division, not from the Pythagorean triple and a reverence for natural order. This represented a fundamental inversion of the ancient worldview. Humanity was no longer an active participant weaving itself into a living cosmos. It had become a detached observer and a forceful controller, bending a neutral, mechanical world to its will through industry and calculation. The ancient art was not so much lost as it was transformed. Its spiritual core hollowed out, leaving behind only the skeleton of its geometry, repurposed for commerce and control. The same tools that now guide our satellites and map our cities are beginning to illuminate the forgotten blueprints of the past. Modern technology has granted us a form of archaeological X-ray vision, peeling back layers of jungle, soil, and time to reveal the staggering scale of ancient intention. In the dense rainforests of Cambodia, airborne lasers known as LiDAR for light detection and ranging have performed a modern miracle. By firing millions of laser pulses from an aircraft and measuring their return, LiDAR creates a detailed three-dimensional map of the ground surface, effectively seeing through the thickest canopy. What it revealed at the medieval metropolis of Inca was breathtaking. Not just the famous temples, but a vast, low-density urban sprawl covering hundreds of square miles, with precisely aligned canals, roads, and community temples arranged in a sophisticated hydraulic grid. This was not a city clustered around a central monument. It was an entire engineered landscape, its alignments woven into the management of water and agriculture on a continental scale. Similarly, in the jungles of Mesoamerica, LiDAR has uncovered lost cities in Guatemala, showing that the Maya civilization was far more populous and interconnected than ever imagined, with raised highways or sacbiob running in straight lines for miles between ceremonial centers, proving their alignments were not isolated to single sites but formed a network of sacred geography. From the vantage point of space, satellite imagery adds another layer to the mystery. Advanced sensors can detect subtle variations in soil moisture and vegetation health, revealing patterns invisible from the ground. In this way, researchers have identified enormous geoglyphs, massive earthworks in shapes of animals and geometric forms, etched into the plains of Peru and the deserts of Kazakhstan. Some of these formations, like the famous Nazca lines, align with solstice sunrises or point toward sources of water, suggesting a complex language of landscape symbols that integrated astronomy with resource mapping. These technologies confirm a profound truth. The ancient world was not a collection of isolated wonders. The straight ceremonial avenues of Teotihuacan, the cardinal grids of Roman colonies, and the solstice-aligned henges of Europe all speak a common language of intentional design, now visible to us across continents thanks to our orbital perspective. Perhaps the most powerful tool for understanding the why behind these alignments is three-dimensional computer modeling. Archaeoastronomers can now reconstruct the precise night sky as it appeared over Giza in 2500 BCE, or simulate the sunrise across the Salisbury Plain 4,000 years ago. They can digitally rebuild a ruined temple, then animate the sun's path through its doorways over the course of a year, testing alignment hypotheses with pixel-perfect accuracy. This virtual experimentation has moved beyond speculation. At Chichen Itza, models confirmed that during the equinoxes, the setting sun casts a shadow on the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan that creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the staircase, a dramatic fusion of astronomy, architecture, and mythology made quantifiable. These tools do not hand us the answers, they hand us better questions. They provide irrefutable data on scale and precision, forcing us to grapple with the interconnected minds of the past. We can now see that a straight line drawn from one mountain temple might point directly to another 50 miles away, suggesting a coordinated vision across vast territories. The mystery deepens even as the picture clarifies, revealing a planet once crisscrossed with intentional lines of sight. A global tapestry of meaning we are only just beginning to trace from the shadows. This profound connection between past and present carries a weight of responsibility for how we approach these sites today. The stones may be silent, but for many communities around the world, they are far from empty. They are living ancestors, active places of prayer, and anchors of cultural identity that have endured for centuries. This reality creates a vital ethical tension in our quest for understanding. Is our primary goal to investigate, or is it to preserve? For generations, archaeology operated under a colonial mindset, treating sacred sites as abandoned puzzles to be solved, their artifacts extracted for distant museums. This approach, while yielding information, often inflicted deep cultural wounds, severing the living link between a people and their heritage. The act of digging is not neutral. It can be a profound disruption, both physically and spiritually. Today, a more respectful paradigm is taking hold, one that seeks balance. The guiding principle is that investigation must not come at the cost of integrity or respect. This has led to a revolution in non-invasive technology. Tools like ground-penetrating radar send pulses into the earth, mapping buried structures without moving a single stone. Drone photography creates detailed three-dimensional models from the air, revealing alignments and patterns invisible from the ground. These methods allow us to see without touching, to learn without taking. But the most crucial tool is not technological, it is human. True ethical practice now demands collaboration with descendant communities from the very beginning. This means listening before digging, seeking permission, and sharing authority over how knowledge is gathered and shared. It recognizes that the deepest understanding of a site comes not just from measuring its angles, but from understanding its stories, its taboos, and its place in the ongoing life of a culture. When researchers work in partnership with indigenous elders and knowledge keepers, a richer picture emerges. An alignment to a solstice sunrise is not merely an engineering feat. It is a ceremonial calendar marking a time for gathering, gratitude, or renewal. A seemingly empty plaza is understood as a space where specific rituals were performed, its acoustics designed for chants that are still remembered. This collaborative approach transforms archaeology from an extraction of data into a dialogue across time. It honors the legacy of the builders by respecting the wishes of their living descendants, ensuring that the pursuit of knowledge strengthens cultural continuity rather than breaking it. The ultimate alignment we must seek, therefore, is not just between stone and star, but between our curiosity and our conscience, recognizing that these places hold a dual significance. They are monuments to a brilliant past and sacred homes for a living present. The patterns they sought in the stars were mirrored perfectly in the world at their feet. Ancient engineers were not just stargazers, they were the most patient naturalists, studying the architecture of the living world with a profound and practical curiosity. They saw how a beehive constructs its combs in perfect hexagons, a shape that uses the least material to create the greatest number of equally sized, strong chambers. They observed the unerring, straight-line migrations of birds across vast distances, a living compass written in feather and instinct. They marveled at the logarithmic spiral of a nautilus shell, a curve that expands while maintaining its form, a model of efficient, graceful growth. These were not mere curiosities. They were blueprints for resilience, lessons in structural efficiency written in wax, bone, and flight path. The modern term for this is biomimicry, the conscious emulation of nature's genius. For the ancients, it was simply learning from the greatest engineer of all. By observing which shapes held under pressure, which patterns repeated in living systems, and which paths were followed by other creatures, they could infer universal principles of stability and direction. This instinctual mimicry led them to forms that have stood the test of millennia. The trapezoidal doors and windows of the Incas, for instance, mimic the sturdy, branching forms of trees and mountain crags, shapes inherently resistant to shearing forces. The arched vault, later perfected by the Romans, finds its precursor in the curved strength of an eggshell or the domed canopy of a forest. Even the very act of aligning a city with a celestial event echoes the innate alignment of a sunflower turning its face to follow the sun across the sky, a daily ritual of orientation toward the source of life. This deep observation created a powerful feedback loop. The same mind that noted the Fibonacci sequence in a pine cone could apply its proportional harmony to the layout of a temple complex, creating spaces that felt organically correct and balanced. The builder who understood how a spider's web distributes tension could apply that knowledge to the weave of a rope bridge or the support of a cantilevered roof. Their work became a dialogue with the environment in the fullest sense, aligning not only with the macrocosm of the heavens but with the microcosm of leaf, shell, and hive. This explains the enduring power of their creations. A structure that follows the logic of a honeycomb or a nautilus is not fighting nature's laws, it is collaborating with them. It is why these places feel so strangely alive, as if they grew from the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. The stones do not just point to the stars, they whisper the secrets of the forest, the river, and the flock moving as one across the open sky, proving that the most sophisticated engineering often begins with the humility to learn from the world already built around us. The word primitive is a trap, a comforting label that collapses the vast, intricate world of our ancestors into a simple story of progress. It suggests a linear march from simple to complex, with our modern vantage point as the inevitable, superior destination. But stand before the seamless joinery of an Incan wall or trace the celestial roadmap of Teotihuacan, and that story falls apart. These were not the lucky guesses of simple people. They are the signatures of minds that could hold a multi-generational vision, perform abstract calculations with rope and shadow, and solve spatial problems of staggering complexity. Their intellectual capacity was not lesser than our own. It was channeled through a different set of tools and toward a different set of priorities. We measure intelligence by microprocessors and steel. They measured it by the precise angle of a solstice shadow or the ability to make a mountain participate in a city's design. This is not a deficit of thought, but a testament to its breathtaking adaptability. To call them primitive is to fundamentally misunderstand the nature of human ingenuity. It blinds us to the fact that their greatest resource was not metal or machinery, but a deep, cultivated wisdom, a way of thinking that saw the universe as an interconnected system and learned to build within its logic. Their technology was an elegant synthesis of observation and material. It was the knotted cord that held a theorem, the still water that defined a plain, and the patient observation of a star's return that became a calendar. This was a high-tech civilization built with Stone Age tools, and that is precisely what makes it so profoundly impressive. When we finally shed the condescension of the word primitive, a new clarity emerges. The alignments we have traced are not mysterious artifacts left by a less advanced people. They are the brilliant, logical, and beautiful solutions of engineers, astronomers, and artists who face the same eternal human challenges we do: the need to find our place, to mark our time, and to build something that whispers our understanding of the world to the future. Their success, written in enduring stone, demands we meet them not with puzzlement, but with respect, recognizing in their silent geometry a peerage of intellect across the ages. Our understanding of the past is a shifting mosaic, where new pieces often rearrange the entire picture. For every alignment we can explain with ropes and shadows, there remain monumental puzzles that ignite passionate debate and humble even the most seasoned experts. The sprawling geoglyphs of the Nazca Desert present one of the most iconic enigmas. These vast lines depicting animals, plants, and geometric shapes are only comprehensible from high above the plain. The prevailing theory suggests they were sacred pathways for ritual processions, their straight lines and figures meant to be walked upon in ceremonies to summon water from the arid sky. Yet the sheer scale and precision of these markings, some running perfectly straight for miles over broken terrain, continue to fuel speculation. Could they have served as a giant astronomical calendar, their orientations mapping celestial cycles? Or were they, as some have controversially proposed, messages intended for entities viewing from above? The debate is far from settled, and it underscores a fundamental challenge. We must be careful not to project our modern fascination with aerial views onto a culture whose rituals were grounded in the very earth they so meticulously marked. Each new geological survey or climatic study adds data, but the ultimate meaning remains woven into the lost fabric of Nazca belief, a reminder that we can sometimes map the lines of a culture without fully deciphering their language. Half a world away, the stone circles of Göbekli Tepe push the dawn of monumental engineering back over 11,000 years, shattering previous timelines. Here, hunter-gatherers erected massive T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in precise circular enclosures. The orientations of these pillars are not random. Research indicates they may be aligned with the rising points of specific stars, notably Sirius, or with cyclical patterns of the sun and moon, but the purpose of these alignments is hotly contested. Were these the world's first temples, designed to track celestial events for ritual calendars, or do they represent a more complex social phenomenon, perhaps commemorating ancestral stories or territorial claims through celestial symbolism? The ongoing excavation and analysis at Göbekli Tepe forces a profound re-evaluation of human history. It suggests that the drive to build in alignment with the cosmos may not have been a product of settled, agricultural societies, but perhaps the very catalyst that brought people together and spurred the invention of civilization itself. Each season of digging at this site has the potential to rewrite our origin story, proving that the past still holds revolutionary surprises. Then there are the physical feats that defy our reconstructions. The colossal stone trilogy at Baalbek in Lebanon, known as the Trilithon, features 3 blocks each weighing an estimated 800 tons. They sit perfectly positioned atop a wall of slightly smaller, yet still unimaginably heavy, stones. The quarry from which they were cut lies nearly a mile away. How were these behemoths transported and, even more perplexingly, raised to a height of over 20 feet? Experimental archaeology has shown the theoretical possibility of using wooden sledges, rollers, and levers with vast teams of people, but the practical logistics on such a scale remain daunting. Some researchers point to intricate Roman crane technology, while others speculate about lost techniques of weight distribution or even the use of temporary earthen ramps that left no trace. The debate is not merely academic, it cuts to the heart of ancient capability. Solving the puzzle of Baalbek would not just explain 3 stones, it would reveal a missing chapter in the history of engineering physics, a chapter where the limits of pre-industrial human cooperation and ingenuity were pushed to an extreme we are still struggling to quantify. These vibrant debates are not signs of failure in the field, they are the proof of its life. Each new technological tool, from advanced ground-penetrating radar to isotopic analysis of stone quarries, provides fresh evidence that can overturn decades of accepted theory. A recent laser scan of a site might reveal a previously unnoticed sightline to a distant mountain, instantly spawning a new hypothesis about its ceremonial use. The discovery of an artisan's workshop with unfinished stones can revolutionize our understanding of the carving process. This dynamic, sometimes contentious, conversation across time is what keeps the story of our ancestors alive and evolving. It reminds us that history is not a dusty collection of settled facts, but an ongoing investigation, a dialogue between the silent testimony of stone and the restless curiosity of the human mind. The true alignment we seek, then, is not just between ancient monuments and the stars, but between our questions and their enduring, enigmatic answers. Their legacy is not locked in the past, but speaks directly to the most pressing challenges of our present. In an era defined by climate uncertainty and the quick turnover of disposable architecture, the ancient master builders offer a radical, yet deeply practical alternative. They understood sustainability not as an added feature, but as the foundational principle of creation. Every material was local, chosen for its endurance and harmony with the landscape. The limestone of Giza was quarried from the plateau itself. The granite of Machu Picchu was wrested from the surrounding mountains. The timber for Stonehenge's massive frameworks came from nearby forests. This minimized the colossal energy cost of transport and ensured the structures would weather the local climate for which they were engineered. There were no supply chains stretching across oceans, no synthetic materials that would degrade in centuries. They built with the bones of the earth, and in doing so created monuments that became part of the earth's own enduring story. This stands in stark contrast to our modern paradigm, where buildings are often designed with planned obsolescence, using materials shipped from global markets, creating a staggering carbon footprint for both construction and eventual demolition. The ancient model asks a profound question. What if we designed our cities not just for the next fiscal quarter, but for the next 1,000 years? What if we valued permanence over profit and saw our structures as a lasting gift to future generations rather than a temporary asset? This shift requires a quality we have largely forgotten: the patience of deep time. Ancient projects unfolded on a timescale that humbles our modern rush. A single pyramid or cathedral might take decades, even a full century to complete. The builders knew they would not live to see the final capstone set. They worked for a vision that extended far beyond their own lifespans, contributing to a story whose final chapter they would never read. This generational patience fostered an unparalleled quality of craftsmanship and a profound sense of collective purpose. There was no room for cutting corners, because the corner you cut today would be the weakness that doomed the project for your grandchildren. This long-term vision is perhaps the most difficult lesson for us to relearn. Our political and economic cycles are measured in years, not centuries. We demand instant results and rapid growth. Yet the stability of the ancient world, the resilience of their aligned cities, was purchased with the currency of time. It asks us to reconsider our relationship with progress itself. Is true advancement measured by speed, or by the enduring quality and wisdom embedded in what we leave behind? Can we cultivate the patience to plant the seeds for forests we will never sit under, and to lay the foundations for cities that will thrive long after our names are forgotten? Ultimately, their greatest lesson is one of holistic design. For them, a city was not a machine for living, but a living ecosystem. Its spiritual function, its ecological role, and its social fabric were woven together into a single, inseparable whole. The alignment with the solstice sun was not just an astronomical feat. It was a public calendar, a spiritual renewal, and a communal spectacle that reinforced social cohesion. The water channels of Inca were not just utilities, they were sacred reflections of the cosmic ocean, engines of agricultural abundance, and the physical arteries of the community. The awe-inspiring scale of a temple was not empty grandeur. It was a carefully engineered psychological experience designed to connect the individual to something vast and meaningful. Modern urban planning, in its quest for efficiency, has often fractured this unity. We zone areas for living, working, and commerce, creating sterile districts empty of life for half the day. We build roads for cars, not processions for people. We prioritize traffic flow over human connection. The ancient blueprint suggests a different path. What if we designed our spaces to inspire awe again, not with sheer height, but with intelligent design that connects us to natural cycles? What if we integrated green spaces and water management not as afterthoughts, but as the central, beautiful organs of a city, as the Incas and Khmer did? What if we planned neighborhoods that fostered chance encounters and communal rituals, understanding that social resilience is just as critical as seismic resilience? The principles of cosmic orientation, environmental harmony, and built-in meaning are not archaic curiosities. They are a toolkit for building resilience in the truest sense. A community that feels connected to its place, that understands the rhythms of its environment, and that shares a sense of transcendent purpose is a community that can withstand shocks, both environmental and social. The ancient engineers show us that the most advanced technology is not always the most complex. Sometimes it is the wisdom to use a bucket of water to find true level, to use a length of rope to guarantee a right angle, and to use the unwavering path of a star to anchor a city in eternity. In looking back to their aligned stones, we might just find the direction we need to build a future that is not only sustainable and strong, but truly worthy of the human spirit. The principles of cosmic alignment are not locked away in history books. They are waiting for you right outside your door. This ancient conversation between earth and sky is not a closed chapter. It is an ongoing story, and you can learn to read its lines in the landscape around you. You do not need a degree in archaeology or a bag of specialized tools. You simply need to step outside with a curious eye and a willingness to observe. Start by looking at the oldest structures in your own community. That centuries-old church in the town center, for instance. Many were deliberately built on much older sacred sites, and their long axis often runs east to west, with the altar at the eastern end to catch the morning light of resurrection. Download a simple compass app on your smartphone and stand at the church's main door. Check its orientation. That alignment is a direct, physical thread connecting modern faith to an ancient practice of solar reverence, a quiet testament to how deeply these patterns are woven into our shared history. For a more dramatic experience, plan a visit to a local historical site on a key astronomical date. Many Neolithic stone circles, from smaller local rings to the great monuments, hold public gatherings for the summer solstice sunrise or the equinox. Being present as the sun crests the horizon and aligns with a specific stone or doorway transforms abstract knowledge into a visceral, personal moment. You are not just learning about an alignment, you are standing within its purpose, feeling the same awe that the builders intended to evoke millennia ago. The chill in the air, the slow lightening of the sky, the precise moment the sun's edge touches the stone, these sensations connect you across time to the human desire to mark and celebrate the cosmos's reliable cycles. You can even conduct your own quiet experiments in your neighborhood. Choose a building with a clear architectural feature, like a sharp corner or a tall chimney. Observe the long shadow it casts in late afternoon. Make a mental note of where the shadow falls on a particular day. Then return to the same spot at the same time in a different season, perhaps 3 or 6 months later. You will see that the shadow points in a completely different direction and stretches to a new length. This simple, observable shift is the very phenomenon ancient engineers used to map the year. Your local park, your own home, even a lamppost can become a personal gnomon, a tool for witnessing the Earth's slow tilt in its orbit around the Sun. By actively engaging in this way, you do more than learn. You participate. You become part of the long, unbroken human tradition of seeking order and meaning in the heavens, a direct descendant of the master builders who first dared to translate celestial motion into enduring stone. Their legacy is not just in the distant ruins we marvel at, but in the very way we can choose to see and understand the world immediately around us, finding the extraordinary hidden in the alignment of the everyday. That unified knowledge system was the invisible blueprint, a web of understanding so complete it left no distinction between science and spirit. For the master builders, a perfect right angle was not just a geometric fact, it was a moral imperative, a reflection of cosmic order. The precise tracking of a star's return was not merely astronomy, it was a form of communication with ancestors or deities. This profound integration meant every act of construction was layered with meaning. When an Egyptian cord stretcher measured out the base of a pyramid with a knotted rope, he was not just laying out a construction site, he was enacting a sacred geometry believed to uphold the universe. The tension in that rope echoed the tension that held the stars in their courses. The leveling of a foundation with water was not just a practical step, it was a ritual of purification and balance, ensuring the structure would stand as stable as the calm surface of a primordial ocean. This is why their cities feel so strangely alive, even in ruin. They were not assembled from disparate parts but grown from a single, coherent seed of thought. Every street, every plaza, every aligned doorway was an expression of the same core philosophy, a philosophy where knowledge of the physical world was inseparable from understanding one's place within it. The result was an environment that educated its inhabitants daily. A citizen walking the Avenue of the Dead at Teotihuacan was not just moving from one place to another. He was walking a timeline, his path aligned with the Pleiades, his city a three-dimensional model of celestial cycles. The light falling through a specific window at Machu Picchu on the solstice was a public announcement, a shared experience that reinforced a collective identity rooted in solar worship and agricultural rhythm. This integration created a powerful feedback loop. The success of the alignment, the awe it inspired, validated the underlying belief system, and that reinforced belief motivated the community to undertake even more ambitious projects, further refining their techniques in a virtuous cycle of faith and engineering. The city itself became the ultimate teacher, the ultimate priest, and the ultimate calendar all at once. It was a machine for manufacturing meaning, built from stone and aligned with the stars, designed to produce not goods, but a specific state of being, a civilization permanently oriented toward harmony with forces greater than itself. This holistic vision challenges our modern fragmentation of knowledge. We have experts for stars, experts for stones, and experts for spirits, but rarely do their blueprints overlap. The ancient world reminds us that the most enduring human achievements often arise not from specialization alone, but from synthesis, from the courageous act of weaving every strand of understanding into a single, unbreakable cord strong enough to pull a vision from the heavens and anchor it forever to the earth. From the shadow of a simple stick to the silent gaze of a Moai, the story of ancient alignment is a testament to human curiosity, perseverance, and intellect. These engineers, without silicon chips or steel beams, performed feats of spatial genius that continue to humble us. They remind us that technology is not just about the tools we hold, but the ideas we hold in our minds and the vision we imprint on the world. As we look up at the same stars they used as guides, their legacy challenges us to build with similar purpose, precision, and respect for the intricate web of life and cosmos we are all a part of. If you found this journey through time enlightening, share your thoughts on which ancient site fascinates you most in the comments below, and subscribe to delve deeper into history's greatest mysteries.